set the alarm on my watch so I don't go over 10 minutes. I won't keep you too long. My humble pranams at the divine lotus feet of our divine Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, the Lord of the universe, the indweller in our hearts at all times. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words today. Last year, I was here 1 year ago, and you had given me that opportunity, and I shared with you something that I had learned the previous year, and that was in my readings of the Prashanti Vahini, Swami's writings of the 17 Vahini series. In the Prashanti Vahini, there is a particular line in it where Swami says, "Write the letter of your life." Write the letter of your life. And then he goes on to say, when will you write it? Where will you write it? And when will it reach me? And that previous year when I read those lines, it really had such an impact in terms of what our role is being devotees of Bhagavan. And this past year, I read that same Vahini series, that same Prashanti Vahini, for probably the 5th time, and there is a particular line that eluded me for all of that time, all these years, that I never really understood that line, or I read it, but it didn't really mean anything at that particular time. And I'll come to that particular sentence. It's such a short sentence, but it had a profound change in my understanding of Swami's teachings. So I'd like to start with a story. And this particular story is regarding one of this particular sage, Adi Shankara, who lived in the 7th century, almost about 1400 years ago, 1400 years ago. He had a profound impact on Hinduism in India and throughout the world, specifically Advaita Vedanta, which is Swami's teachings himself. And Adi Shankara had many disciples. One of his disciples was called Sananda. And Sananda wanted to go into the forest to meditate and realize his chosen deity, which is Lord Narasimha. Lord Narasimha is the 4th of the Vishnu avatars. And Lord Narasimha was very large. He had a human body with a lion head. And this particular disciple wanted to see Lord Narasimha. And so he went into the forest and he sat to meditate. As he entered the forest, looking for a place to meditate, a hunter came by. A hunter came by and asked him, "What is your purpose in this forest?" And so the sage didn't want to tell him that he is there to do penance, to receive the darshan of Lord Narasimha. And he was thinking in his mind, he is a hunter, he's a tribesman, he's not going to be able to understand penance and meditation. I'll just say that I'm just here in this forest. And so then the hunter said, "Can I be of service to you?" And so then this sage is wanting some quiet time for him to sit and do his penance and meditate, but this particular hunter keeps on bothering him. And then so at least that's how he perceived it. And so then the sage Sananda said, "Okay, instead of telling him that I'm here to do my penance and meditate, I would say," and told that hunter that I'm here to find this particular animal. He has a human body with a lion head. And so then this hunter said, "I live in this forest. I have never seen such an animal." And then the sage then smiled. So then the hunter then looks at him and says, "Why, sir, are you smiling?" And then the sage says, "Okay, how about you go out to the forest and look for this animal. You go out into the forest and look for this animal, and you bring the animal to me." And thinking that this hunter, this would be one way of sending this hunter off so that he can sit in silence and do his meditation. And so then the hunter leaves the sage and goes into the forest looking for this person, this animal with a human body with a lion head. And the sage then sits down in meditation and begins his meditation, his tapas. So I'll pause the story at this particular stage because I know in your mind you're beginning to form what is the trait, what is the characteristic of this particular sage. In the sage itself, because he is not actually saying the reason why he's there, but he doesn't expect this particular hunter to find God. And so then he simply sends him off his way so that he himself can sit down. And the trait here is ego. And in specific case, spiritual egoism. In all of Swami's teachings, I must say that character is what Swami emphasizes the most, as the most important trait. How do we develop that character? And when we develop that character, then such qualities of the 6 enemies, karma, krodha, anger, ego, will diminish. One of the Swami's most profound teachings is the end of education is character. You see, when we are born, we're born with certain vasanas, with certain traits, basic instincts. Our personality is defined by these basic instincts. And it's through those basic instincts that we think and act and speak. But it is our character, when we prioritize the values and in our human values, then we are able to overcome these basic instincts. Character allows us to overcome our basic instincts. So character plays an important role. Another item for the children, for another thing that we are born with is talent. All of us have talents. We're born with these talents. And through those talents, we can have ambition. What is ambition? Ambition is the outcome that we want to attain, a specific outcome that we want to attain. We want to be able to become someone, specifically, let's say, a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. There is this particular author that writes on psychology, and he talks about this, and he has this beautiful definition for talent, and he says, talent sets the floor, character sets the ceiling. So you can have all of the talent you want, and you can be ambitious to attain that whatever, that worldly ambition that we want to have a good life, to be able to have sufficient amount of fun, a salary, having a job, doing well in it. But all of that doesn't matter what you are, who you become. Whether you are a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor who is doing well, in Swami's eyes, we are all at the floor. It is character that allows us to bring us up to that ceiling. So ambition is only a single outcome that we want to attain. What we want to be able to do is to aspire. Aspiration is the person that we hope to become. And character allows us to unlock those hidden potentials. And that is what Bhagavan is here for. That is his role as the Kali Yuga avatar, is to teach us how to develop our character. In psychology, they have these 3 C's, they call it, and it's beautiful. The first C is a critic, and this would be people that are within our circle, our friends, family. A critic sees the weaknesses and attacks your worst self. A critic sees your weaknesses and attacks your worst self. A cheerleader is the second C. A A cheerleader sees your strengths and celebrates the best of yourself. But it's the last C, which is a coach. A coach sees your potential and helps you become the best version of yourself. And that is Bhagavan. He is our coach, our guru, and he's here for us because he sees the potential. He only sees the positives in all of us. We all have both weaknesses and positives and negative, but he only sees the positives to allow us to be able to unlock our character and that unlock our inner hidden potential to fully realize. In Swami's teachings, we always want to be able to know where we stand in terms of our ability to become better at what we're doing. We're growing closer to him. And we always have to introspect. Do I get angry very quickly? Do I get very angry very fast? Do I have untruthful thoughts? It's easy to be truthful in actions and spoken words, but sometimes we have untruthful thoughts in our minds. And Swami wants us to be able to practice all the 5 human values in our thoughts, words, and deeds. In fact, it is the most basic of all of the importance of all of Swami's teachings. In one of his quotes, he talks about, there is this particular sage, Patanjali. Patanjali has these 8 Yoga Sutras, 8 levels. And the first level is Yama. And Yama is Ahimsa, Satya, and this is the basic 5 human values. Then he goes on to Niyama. Niyama is the control of the inner senses. And then you have Asana, which is your posture, Pranamaya, your breath control, Pratyahara, and that is your control of the senses, or distancing from your senses. And then only comes Dharana, concentration, dhyana, meditation, and then lastly the Samadhi, the self-realization set. So meditation comes towards the end. Sometimes, often we sit for meditation, our minds are all over the place. We're thinking about this, we're thinking about that, we're thinking about what we have to cook for dinner, tomorrow for work, for school. Why? Because we jumped past that first stage. That first stage is our character. And that character, in order to practice that character, that's the 5 human values. The true test of our character is when we face hardships. It's easy to tell and convince ourselves that we have 5 human values, but it's only when we suffer, when we face difficulties in life, then our character is tested. Recently, I read this remarkable book called Man's Search for Meaning in Life by an author called Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl lived through the Holocaust in one of the concentration camps during World War II. I won't go into the details of it, but most of you who know what happened in those concentration camps, they suffered dearly. Many millions died.
It was Jew.
All of the Jewish people were put in these prisons. And Viktor Frankl then came to a realization. And what he realized, and then he went and he survived it. And he wrote a book. And what he realized, and his job was to lay railway tracks. And they had grown so thin, they were almost going to die. Because all they get is one little cup of soup a day. And so Viktor Frankl then in his autobiography said these words: I do not know when I'm going to die and where I'm going to die. I could either die in the present or I could either die next to the railway track. I cannot choose where I'm going to die. But what I can choose is how I respond to suffering. That is a remarkable realization of someone who is at the throes of death. The only thing I can choose is how I respond to suffering. And how we respond to suffering is when Swami, with his teachings of 5 human values, because what it allows us to do is to raise us to a level where our character is allow us to live through our sufferings. So when we pray, let us pray for Swami not to remove the sufferings, but to give us the strength to endure them. It is through sufferings that we get closer to Swami. And here comes the end of this particular Lord Narasimha story. So Lord Narasimha, this particular hunter goes looking for this particular animal without sleep, drink, water, food. All he's thinking about is, I want to find this Lord Narasimha for that sage, because he wants to be at service to the sage. His only thought is for the sage. He looks for Lord Narasimha while the sage is meditating upon Lord Narasimha. Then Lord Narasimha appears. But to whom? To the hunter. He appears to the hunter. Now, this particular hunter has a rope with a loop. So he captures Lord Narasimha. So Lord Narasimha allows himself to be captured with this rope and drags him, because he doesn't know that Lord Narasimha is God. Yeah. Drags him to the sage and then wakes the sage up and says, Sage, I have found your animal that you've been looking for. And the sage wakes up, looks at him, and he looks, there's a rope and the hunter, and first he thinks, my goodness, Lord Narasimha has appeared in front of me. But then he realizes that this particular hunter is holding a rope that is tied around the Lord. And so he's asking, what are you doing holding this rope around Lord Narasimha? Then the Lord then tells him, it is the intensity with which that hunter was thinking of me that allowed him to find me. His character was of such that intensity. So intensity in our character is so important. So we can say 5 human values, but how intensely do we practice them? And it's because that hunter had practiced them that it allowed him to be able to find the Lord. I'll leave you with this particular quote from Swami from this Prashanti Vahini, and then we'll end it. And thank you so much for your time, and I went over 5 minutes. This particular quote is remarkable because it really turned my understanding of Swami's teachings completely upside down. The quote is, you cannot be aware of its absence if you have it. That quote is in regard to world peace. Many of us, of course, a lot of us have a lot of anxieties, what is happening over the world and for the future. But this particular quote, and we always think that world peace is something that is going to happen, or the golden age is something that is going to happen. But listen to Swami's message, and what he says is, if you cannot be aware of it, right? You cannot be aware of its absence if you have it. In other words, if you have peace in your heart, then you have world peace. World peace is not something that happens independent of you. It is not as if world peace happens elsewhere and you are a witness watching the world peace happen. Golden age doesn't happen outside of you, because that's duality. What Swami is saying is that as long as you have peace in your heart, that you've realized peace, then that's when world peace happens. So world peace is in us. It is not something that happens external to us. As long as we realize that peace, then the world becomes peaceful, because we cannot be aware of its absence. It is such a complete turnaround of Swami's teachings. And so with that, thank you so much for your time. And I hope that all of us together, as Swami as our coach, who sees the potential in us, that we're able to become the best version of ourselves, that we aspire to be the best that we hope to be. Thank you, Jay Sara.